Brian, Roz, all of you have created this movement and helped me and others to keep going. And let me take this, this opportunity to welcome two very special guests who've come here tonight, who are so much part of this Malaysia story, of this One MDB story. Xavier Justo and his wife, and Pascal and his wife are here this evening, Laura and Ellen. So, you know, this is a sort of great moment. Writing the book about my first book, and here all my friends from over the years to help me launch it. To be honest, I never imagined I would write a book. And so it's an extraordinary experience for me. It's not something that, you know, I've been looking forward to all my life, because I didn't think I was the sort of person that would end up writing a book. And in a way, this book, I think, wrote itself. I mean, it had to be written, didn't it? After everything we've been through and all the adventures we've been through, this was a book that had to be written, as I was increasingly told, as this extraordinary adventure that we've all lived through. This discovery of this amazing One MDB scandal has unfolded, and then, of course, you know, all the lashbacks and the political drama that we went through to somehow get to where we did on May the 9th. You know, I've been signing these books this evening, and I have to say I've looked again at it, and thank you so much. It's quite dauntingly large, and the type is quite dauntingly small. And Sam and I and the team had quite a sort of, you know, we thought a lot about this, and actually when I first went to publishers, certainly here, you know, the reaction was, without really reading about it, was, oh, you know, we have to make this easy, we have to make it shorter, you know, and, you know, otherwise, who's going to read it? And we thought about this, and we thought, well, there's just so much that happened. You can't leave it out. So because of that, I made a decision, which was we were going to write this book with Malaysians in mind. And you're going to have to read it, young lady, unless you're very quiet. We're going to write this with Malaysians in mind, and you know, it's going to be about all the things that have happened, because I think we need that kind of record, and I wanted to provide a record so that people, you know, we've been following this story, and I've been having to get it out in all sorts of ways. Many of the people I've spoken to this evening have come and sort of said, you know, I have to print this off, and then I will take it in bulk, print it off to, you know, so that my members of my family could see it and photocopy it and circulate it round. And you know, it's been Malaysia's Watergate political scandal, and as a result, I think people wanted to know, and so I've written it in the only way that you know, that I could, which is through my own eyes. And although it's a long story, I hope that it is one that you know, will take you with me, take you through the journey. It certainly was a very exciting episode to live through. So much happened, and he's off to read the book and have it read to him. Well, so I didn't take that advice. I would like to say that I'm very glad I didn't. The book is already on to its 4th print run in Malaysia, so we must have done something right. And I'm very happy that it seems to be popular here with you as well. And indeed, you know, I didn't actually write this, you know, to sell lots of books to people who didn't know about Malaysia in airports. I wrote it because something happened I felt people needed to know about, and I felt it was so important, the significance of what this story tells us about not just what was going on in Malaysia, but how what was going on in Malaysia, you know, was part of so many very worrying structural failings in the way that globalization has unraveled, and issues that we need to really address, because the guys who are, you know, raping the coffers of the nation in Malaysia were only doing so because it was possible for them to do so and possible for them to get their money out. And I was in South Africa earlier in the week, and you know, my story resonated so much with that audience, and sadly, lamentably, I think the story resonates with so many other people all around the world. And the more that people understand, you know, what this is about and what we need to do to stop it and the impact it has, the better. So I wasn't going to hold back on that. I have had, you know, a lot of the people advise me on keeping the book maybe sort of a more frothy sort of frolic through what fun it is to steal a lot of money and spend it. You know, a lot of people advise me that you know, this would be a difficult book to get out, and yeah, they weren't wrong. I've had, I think I've got 4 legal cases going on at the moment. Shillings on behalf of Jolo, and I don't think there are many people in the room here who won't know that Jolo is the fugitive financier who was behind really so many of the schemes that Najadi used to steal. In this case, we've identified a $7 billion theft from Malaysia's public funds, but of course, you know, that was just one of many. Shillings have, well, they attacked my publisher, NAMI, who had to deal with that, and they've written to every single bookshop in the UK in an unprecedented effort to deter people from actually being able to sell the book. And that's what money can buy you. I've had to sort of alter the way I publish the book so that Jolo will have to sue me directly. And he hasn't yet, actually. I've got a lot of information about Jolo. But, you know, I am saying to people, you know, the books are on sale at the moment, legally. They may not be, they may become a rare item. So, you know, people should take their opportunity. I also am proud to boast that I probably have the largest single libel demand that anyone's ever received on the planet. The Sultana of Terengganu has demanded $300 million, which she hopes that I'll be able to provide for her charities. Actually, no, ringgit, only $100 million. And that was for misidentifying her as the person who had introduced Jolo to her husband and then got together involved in the Terengganu fund, as opposed to the Sultana's sister himself. So, you know, it's a crazy case. And I'm also dealing, of course, with another well-known libel firm in the UK who has yesterday told me that they are planning to get me to pulp the book. I have to pulp the book, unless actually they won't be, because they say I've broken an agreement with their client, not to mention their name in the book. They say they won't do that actually if I do something that the client would like me to do in America, because America doesn't have our legal system, they don't have our libel laws, and they're putting a finger up to the demands of this gentleman and telling him that they're not going to do what he wants. So that's called legal blackmail, so I've had a bit of that. And of course there's the ongoing case with PAS as well, the political party who's now, since May the 9th, really been reduced in its span to the state of Terengganu. I gather they're going to be adding a T to the end of their acronym. Past. So that aside, why did I get on this whole extraordinary adventure? Why did this woman from London, albeit born in Sarawak, start to find themselves unravelling a massive scandal in Malaysia? And the reason why it was nothing to do with high finance or big business or me being interested in global economics. Both my sons are studying economics and they know how little I know on that subject. It was quite a challenge. The reason I got involved was from the grassroots. I saw a terrible wrong, a worrying development. I went back, in fact, I think Marjorie is here in the room. She's somewhat responsible for me going back to the place of my birth in Kuching to take part in a conference there. And when I had grown up there in the 60s, the island of Borneo was the biggest rainforest in Southeast Asia, the most biodiverse rainforest and the oldest rainforest in the world. And it had an amazing variety of indigenous communities who were living there, living off the jungle and obviously not advanced, not developed, but secure in their lives, and they had ownership of that land. It had been left in their ownership. And when I went back, of course, what I found was a devastation, a human tragedy. The lands have been just ripped from them, and an environmental catastrophe, which was the destruction of the Borneo rainforest. And all of us, you know, this is not just a local tragedy, it's a global issue. Deforestation is arguably the greatest driver of global warming, you know, the replacement of this region by oil palm has created you know, an onset of desertification in that area, a massive area. You know, the head of Shell just last week acknowledged that the best way, in fact the only way, he felt we could actually reverse that progress towards 1.5 centigrade raise in temperature in the next 12 years, I think, would be to regrow rainforests. So these are issues that, you know, were not being reported in any way. You know, the human rights disaster wasn't being reported, and this incredibly important environmental issue was barely being reported. And you know, and because I was a reporter, I was safely here in the UK. This started to weigh on my mind. I, by that time, had got the measure of situation. I talked to local journalists, and I realised that this was the product of corruption and oppressive government. A local potentate who had got total control over the country and was taking all the wealth and not giving a jot for the consequences, and leaving the local people in whose name all this development, as he called it, was taking place, with nothing. It soon became clear to me that once again, this was not just a local issue, it was a global issue. There's no point ripping out a rainforest and turning it into matchsticks, which is what these guys were doing, unless you can get the profits out and invested, you know, in the developed world where you want to run around and have fun. And helping the local chief minister in Sarawak to do that and become one of the richest men on the planet in the process was our global financial system. You know, an army of Western professionals, bankers, accountants, wealth managers, PR people, offshore incorporators, trustees, lawyers, all of them at the disposal of Tide Mahmood and all the rest, utilising this burgeoning offshore system that has been barely remarked until very recently. We've allowed it to rampage out of control so that a huge section of global money is just out of jurisdiction. Nobody taxes it, nobody controls it. It belongs to a tiny global elite, many of them criminals and many of them kleptocrats who have gained far too much control within their own country and are being tolerated in the centres of power because of their great wealth and power. And this has become, you know, I think it's reached dangerous levels. You know, you have a situation, actually the newly departed deputy head of the FBI, Andrew McCabe, spoke about this, because thank goodness some of the American establishment has taken this on board, this problem. And he explained how detrimental it is to our democracies to have these powerful global elites in a position where they are pouring money into our countries, influencing policies and basically bringing corrupt practice with them. You know, I'm not going to get political about it, but I think we can all think of examples where money is talking and morals are not in places of power, and the impact that has, you know, on the cleanliness of our democracies, and indeed on the strength of our democracies. we're looking now at elections that may have been subverted, not just in America but all over. We're looking at the power of money insidiously influencing our own lives. And so, you know, it was fascinating, really. I came in and I tugged a thread beginning in Sarawak and found that actually what I was starting to unravel was a global network. And the same entities were coming up again and again. And you know, when I moved on from this particular kleptocrat, who, you know, I was furious. I did a grand job of exposing Tiger Mahmood. You know, we went out and we worked for a couple of years showing all his properties, his wealth, bringing that information, using the internet to the people in Sarawak. I mean, obviously I was promptly banned from Sarawak and was unable to go back. But I used this wonderful instrument of the internet. And of course, then moved on to Musa Aman, who's now thankfully kicked out of office, in next door Sabah. Again, I was able, thanks to the help of whistleblowers, who have been absolutely vital in all of this, I was able to demonstrate how he was transporting hundreds of millions of dollars out of Sabah because of kickbacks he was taking for illegal logging. And they were going around these shell companies in the offshore jurisdictions, bank accounts in Singapore and Hong Kong, with UBS Bank and HSBC before, into his Zurich accounts. Now that's currently, you know, it's taken forever, but there is a prosecution now in Switzerland against UBS Bank for handling that case. But what you weren't getting was any response in Malaysia. And of course, the reason for that was that there was corruption from the top down. And it was for that reason that, frustrated, I suppose, as a journalist, you know, you're supposed to do the story and then the law and order is supposed to come in and sort it out. And of course, that's not how it's working in countries like this. I was tapping my fingers and wondering where we went next, you know, having had quite a lot of lashback by that stage. And again, you know, again you see how you know, the Western professionals are assisting in all of that. The whole evolution of fake news and you know, online fake media sites and trolls, that's familiar to us now. I was one of the victims of, you know, the test casing that was going on in you know, around about 2011, 2010. This whole sort of new horizon for communications people was sort of being experimented on in developing countries, and millions of dollars were commissioned off these Western companies. Bell Pottinger was one that got a big contract. FBC Media, which was a big production company here, got a big contract. Millions of dollars from first Tiger Mahmood and then Najib, to try out these new fake media skills against me, actually. And you know, as a family, we went through years of you know, me finding myself the object of extraordinary vilification on these sort of constructive blogs, anonymous blogs that were supposedly representing local opinion, and you know, just traducing my, you know, trying to destroy my reputation. And of course, you saw that, you know, that was honed, and I actually had quite good fun exposing it. We were able to expose a lot of these people. You know, then it was very fascinating to see it all rerun now, you know, with fake Facebook sites, fake Twitter sites, all feeding into the American election. Well, we'd seen it all in Malaysia, you know, several elections earlier. So this was all very fascinating, and really I wasn't sure where we were going to go with it until 2013, and then just the evolution of the story. And I knew there was this slush fund, suspected slush fund, for the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Najib Razak, who'd been posing as a bit of a reformer actually, but you know, the ostentation of his family and and his actual acts in office were making it quite clear that this was a very corrupt ruler who was seeking to use his position to make himself extremely rich and powerful, a classic kleptocrat. The story just broke. I mean, you can read it in the book, how I stumbled across it. Christmas 2013, I received an email to say, did I know that Najib's stepson was the producer behind Wolf of Wall Street, the Hollywood movie that everybody was watching being promoted, and it was all up on the posters around town. That was interesting. I started looking into it and realised that it was $100 million movie. I mean, and also because Rosmer was trying to get it promoted so that Malaysian school children should see it. And of course, this is not a halal movie. It's a really disgusting movie. I started to dig. How could a young man still in his very early 30s who hadn't really done a job beyond a few years as a junior banker, able to hit Hollywood and make a $100 million movie. I very soon, when I started Googling and looking around this, it was better than doing the Christmas washing up. I realised that everywhere that Riza Aziz went in Hollywood, there was Jolo, and anyone in Malaysia knew who Jolo was at that stage. He was this ridiculously ostentatious young Penang boy who had mysteriously become so rich that he was described as a billionaire all around Malaysia, all around the world, and all around America. He was just getting in all the news for the amount of money he was splashing around. Nightclubs in Las Vegas, in Hollywood. He had become the famous nightclub man. And that's where I could see at that moment that something wasn't right. You had 1MDB, which was a massive fund that was losing money, that was totally opaque, that was run by the Prime Minister, together with his advisor, Joe Low. And then you were seeing this massively expensive film being produced in Hollywood, with Joe Low at the side of the son of the Prime Minister. And that's where my story at 1MDB begins. And of course, if I had another hour, I could take you through how all that unraveled, and how, if I thought that coming up against Tide Mahmood was giving me a hard time with all the lashbacks, wow, I think Francis has outlined just how bad it got when I took on Najib Razak. But in doing it, I did what I think journalism is there for, which was to bring information to people that they wouldn't have otherwise had. And the Malaysian media had been brought under total control by this kleptocratic government. So I, safely here in the UK, could do this story in a way they couldn't. And that was the point of the project. And I kept it up, and we got the information out. I managed to get the awareness, that new awareness that's been coming into the corridors of power, into America. They've established this new unit in the DOJ called the Kleptocracy Asset Recovery Unit. And I was able to make 1MDB one of their first cases, and they damn well took it on, and they went through the offshore system, they used the dollar clearing system, they went after this fund, and they worked out and detailed, in exact detail, exactly how the money had been stolen and how it had been spent. Now, I'm going to have to wrap now, but before I do, I just want to finally make the point of how, none of this sort of journalism can really start to pick away at the secrecy without the support of insiders, brave insiders, who come out and bring that information to journalists. Here, we're very privileged to have here today Xavier Justo, who's a very famous name now in Malaysia. He was how I broke the 1MDB story in the end, because he was the man with the inside story on the Petro Saudi deal, that first Petro Saudi deal, where $2 billion was stolen from 1MDB. And this is the story of how I set out to solve the mystery of 1MDB. I started digging into it. I discovered that Xavier existed. I went after Xavier. I made friends with Xavier, and in the end, we brought that material out. And as the hornet's nest was unleashed, Xavier took the most paid the most terrific price for that. And he'll tell you about how he was set up and ended up being imprisoned for 18 months in probably the worst place that one could be imprisoned in Bangkok in Thailand. So, you know, I did one part of this job. There were so many others who worked together to bring the change in Malaysia that enabled the people to walk into their voting booths on May the 9th with a clear understanding of the government they had and a clear decision that it had to be changed. That's how it worked, and this is the story. And that's why it was so important, I felt, to write it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. I think she deserves another round of applause, actually. So, ladies and gentlemen, the second segment of tonight